What happens when a calm, fan-favorite actor walks onto a daytime talk show? And within minutes, the conversation takes a sharp, unexpected turn. Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The camera opens on the familiar set of The View. The audience is already buzzing, light applause rolling through as the hosts settle into their seats. Whoopi Goldberg sits centered, relaxed but observant, her signature calm presence anchoring the table. Around her, the co-hosts exchange smiles, cue cards in hand. Whoopi leans slightly forward, glancing toward the camera. "So, we've got a guest today that a lot of people are very excited about," she says, her tone warm but measured. "You know him from one of the biggest shows out there, and now he's here with us." The audience applause rises instantly. "Please welcome Sam Heughan." Sam walks out with an easy smile, waving as he approaches the table. He shakes hands, gives a quick nod to the audience, and takes his seat. The energy is upbeat, almost celebratory. Thank you, Sam says, adjusting in his chair. "That's a warm welcome." "It's New York, baby," Whoopi replies with a grin. "We do it big." Light laughter ripples across the audience. One of the co-hosts jumps in, leaning towards Sam. "First of all, we have to say people love you. I mean, the fan base, it's intense." Sam chuckles softly. "I've noticed, yes. They're very loyal. And very vocal," another host adds, raising her eyebrows playfully. "Which is great," Sam responds. "It's a privilege, honestly." The conversation flows easily at first. They talk about his recent projects, his time on Outlander, and how his life has changed over the years. Whoopi listens, occasionally nodding, occasionally interjecting with a quick remark or question. Her tone is curious, but there's a subtle shift as the conversation moves away from promotion and into something more personal. "So let me ask you something," Whoopi says, turning fully toward him. "You've got this global fan base, people follow everything you say, everything you do. Do you ever feel like that comes with a responsibility? Like you have to be careful?" Sam pauses for a moment, considering the question. "I think there's always some level of responsibility," he says. "But I also think it's important to stay authentic. People connect with honesty more than perfection." There's a murmur of agreement from the audience. Whoopi tilts her head slightly. "Authentic is good, but sometimes people say things under the label of being authentic that don't land the way they think they will." The tone shifts just a notch. It's subtle but noticeable. Sam picks up on it. "That's true, but I think context matters. Things can be taken out of context very easily these days." A co-host leans in. "Are you referring to something specific?" Sam hesitates for just a fraction of a second. "I mean, not specifically, but I think we've all seen how quickly narratives can change online." Whoopi raises an eyebrow. "Well, sometimes narratives change because people say something that raises eyebrows." The audience reacts with a soft, "Oh," sensing the shift. Sam smiles, but it's tighter now. "Sure, but sometimes people also hear what they want to hear." There's a brief pause. You can feel it, that moment where a casual conversation starts to edge into something sharper. One of the co-hosts tries to lighten the mood. Okay, we're getting a little serious here," she laughs. "Let's pull it back a bit." But Whoopi doesn't fully let it go. "No, it's interesting," she says calmly, "because we talk about this all the time here. Public figures, influence, responsibility. It's not just about what you say, it's how it affects people." Sam nods slowly. "I agree with that. I just think it's also important to allow room for conversation instead of immediate judgment." "Depends on what's being said," Whoopi counters, her tone still even but firmer now. The audience quiets slightly. The energy has shifted. It's no longer just a friendly chat. Sam leans forward a bit. "Of course. But I think we've gotten to a place where people are very quick to label, very quick to react, without necessarily engaging in dialogue." A co-host jumps in, trying to mediate. "I think what he's saying is, there's a difference between accountability and shutting someone down completely." Whoopi nods, but doesn't break eye contact with Sam. "And I hear that, but accountability isn't optional." Sam meets her gaze. "I'm not saying it is." There's a slight pause again. The audience is fully locked in now. Another host tries to shift things slightly. "Let's talk about your fans for a second. They're very protective of you." Sam laughs lightly. "That's one way to put it. And sometimes," she continues, "they go after people online." Sam's expression changes just a little. "That's something I don't support." Whoopi immediately follows up. "But do you call it out?" The question lands heavier than expected. Sam pauses. I've addressed it before. I've said that kindness matters, that respect matters. But do you call it out directly? Whoopi presses. The audience reacts again, that same low murmur. Sam takes a breath. I think there's only so much you can control. At the end of the day, people make their own choices. Whoopi leans back slightly, crossing her arms. That's true, but leadership also means stepping in when things go too far. There it is. The tension is no longer subtle. Sam's tone stays calm, but there's an edge now. And I believe I have done that in my own way. In your own way, Whoopi repeats, almost testing the phrase. A co-host quickly interjects. Okay, let's not forget, he's also here to talk about his new project. But the moment has already taken shape. Whoopi glances briefly at her, then back at Sam. We're just having a conversation. Sam nods. And I'm happy to have it. The audience applauds lightly, sensing both the tension and the professionalism. There's a brief reset. One of the hosts smiles and shifts the topic back to his work, asking about filming challenges and upcoming plans. Sam answers smoothly, clearly experienced in navigating interviews. But the earlier exchange lingers in the air. You can see it in the body language. Whoopi occasionally watching him more closely now, Sam choosing his words more carefully. As the segment continues, there are moments of laughter again, but they feel slightly more measured, slightly more cautious. Then, just as things seem to settle, Whoopi circles back. Let me ask you one more thing, she says, her voice calm but deliberate. Do you think celebrities sometimes underestimate their influence? The audience leans in again. Sam exhales softly, almost smiling at the inevitability of the question. I think it's not about underestimating, he says slowly. It's about navigating something that's constantly changing. Whoopi nods once. That's fair. But influence doesn't go away just because it's complicated. Sam meets her gaze again. No, it doesn't. There's a quiet beat. And in that moment, you can feel it. This isn't just a light daytime interview anymore. It's something else. Something real. And it's just getting started. The conversation doesn't fully reset after that moment. It just shifts shape. There's a quick round of applause as one of the co-hosts pivots again, smiling a little wider than before, like she's trying to bring the energy back up. So, your new project, she says, turning to Sam Heughan. This is something different for you, right? Sam nods, grateful for the change of direction. Yeah, it's definitely a departure. It pushed me in ways I hadn't really experienced before. What kind of ways? Another host asks, leaning in. Emotionally, mostly, Sam replies. It's more grounded, more real world. Less escapism, I suppose. Whoopi watches him carefully, her expression neutral but attentive. Whoopi Goldberg doesn't interrupt this time, but she doesn't fully disengage either. And do you prefer that? The co-host continues. Or do you like the big, epic storytelling more? Sam smiles slightly. I think there's value in both. People need stories that let them escape, but they also need stories that reflect reality. Whoopi finally jumps back in, her voice calm but pointed. And sometimes reality isn't comfortable. Sam glances at her. That's true. She tilts her head. So when reality shows up, whether it's in a role or in real life, how do you decide when to speak up and when to step back? There's a slight shift again. Not as sharp as before, but enough that the audience senses it. Sam takes a breath. I think it depends on the situation. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. But there is a choice, Whoopi says. Yes, Sam agrees. There's always a choice. A co-host quickly adds, trying to soften the tone. And sometimes the wrong choice can come from just not having all the information, right? Exactly, Sam says, nodding. That's what I mean about context. We live in a time where things move so fast. Whoopi cuts in, not aggressively, but firmly. Things have always moved fast when it comes to consequences. The audience reacts again, a mix of murmurs and a few scattered claps. Sam doesn't pull back this time. He leans slightly forward. But the difference now is amplification. A moment can become a global headline in minutes. Whoopi nods. That's true, but that doesn't change the responsibility that comes with being heard. Sam's tone stays controlled, but there's a clear firmness now. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying the environment we're in makes it more complex. One of the co-hosts raises her hands slightly, smiling. Okay, I feel like we're circling something here. Light laughter from the audience, but it's nervous, not relaxed. Because it sounds like you both agree, she continues, but you're coming at it from different angles. Whoopi glances at her briefly, then back at Sam. That's fair. Sam nods. Yeah, I think so. There's a brief pause, one of those live TV moments where no one speaks for just a second too long. Then another co-host jumps in. Let's talk about fan interactions, because that's something you've always been very engaged with. Sam relaxes slightly. Yeah, I try to be. You've done events, meet and greets, charity work. Yeah, that's something I care deeply about, Sam says. Using the platform for something positive. Whoopi nods slowly. That's good. But positivity also means addressing negativity when it shows up. There it is again. She's not letting the earlier thread go. Sam's expression tightens just a little. And I have, in ways that I think are appropriate. Appropriate for who? Whoopi asks, almost immediately. The audience lets out another soft, oh. Sam pauses. Appropriate for the situation. Whoopi leans forward slightly now. Because sometimes what feels appropriate to you doesn't feel sufficient to the people affected. A co-host interjects quickly, sensing the rising tension. I think what Whoopi's getting at is, there's a difference between general statements and direct accountability. Sam nods slowly, choosing his words carefully. I understand that perspective. I really do. But, Whoopi prompts. Sam exhales. But I also think there's a line where it becomes performative. Where people expect a response not because it's meaningful, but because it's expected. The audience reacts, some claps, some murmurs. Whoopi doesn't immediately respond. She studies him for a moment. Performative, she repeats. So you think speaking out can be what, just for show? I think it can be, Sam says. Not always, but sometimes. And silence can also be seen as a statement, Whoopi counters. Sam nods. Yes, it can. Then how do you balance that? She asks. Sam leans back slightly, thinking. By trying to be genuine. By speaking when I feel I can contribute something meaningful, not just noise. One of the co-hosts nods. That's actually a really interesting point. But Whoopi isn't fully convinced. But who decides what's meaningful? Sam meets her gaze. I think that has to come from the individual. And that's where people disagree, Whoopi says. The audience is completely quiet now. Another host tries again to ease things. This is actually a bigger conversation happening everywhere right now, not just with celebrities. Exactly, Sam says quickly. It's not just about actors or public figures. It's about how we all communicate. Whoopi nods, but her tone stays steady. But you're sitting here because you are a public figure. There's no hostility in her voice, just clarity. Sam doesn't back down. And I'm aware of that. A brief pause. Then, unexpectedly, one of the co-hosts shifts slightly in her seat and asks, Do you ever feel misunderstood? The question lands differently, softer, more personal. Sam's expression changes. Yeah, he says quietly. I think everyone does at some point. Even with all the support you have, she asks. Especially then, Sam replies. Because people create an idea of who you are, and sometimes that's not who you actually are. The audience responds with gentle applause. Whoopi watches him, her expression softening just a fraction. That's real, she says. Sam nods. It is. There's a moment, a brief one, where the tension seems to ease. But it doesn't last long. Because Whoopi adds, but being misunderstood doesn't mean you're not responsible for how people experience what you say. The air tightens again. Sam's jaw shifts slightly. I agree, but I also think it's a two-way street. How so? Whoopi asks. I think there has to be a willingness to listen, not just react, Sam says. And what if what people hear is harmful? Whoopi presses. Then it should be addressed, Sam says. Absolutely. Directly, she asks. Sam pauses again. When necessary, yes. The audience murmurs. They can feel the back and forth sharpening. A co-host laughs lightly, trying to cut through the intensity. Okay, this is turning into a full-on debate. A few people clap. Sam smiles slightly, but it doesn't fully reach his eyes. I didn't expect this today. Whoopi smiles back just a little. Neither did we. There's a ripple of laughter. But the energy is different now. It's not just playful anymore. It's engaged, almost confrontational, but still controlled. The kind of conversation that happens live, where no one fully backs down, but no one crosses the line either. And you can tell, they're not done yet. There's a brief pause after that last exchange. The kind that feels longer on live television than it actually is. You can hear a few scattered claps from the audience, but most people are just watching closely now, waiting to see where this goes next. One of the co-hosts leans forward, smiling, trying to steady the rhythm again. You know, this is actually why people love watching conversations like this, she says. Because it's real. It's not just surface level. Sam Heughan nods slightly, still composed. I think real conversations are important. Whoopi Goldberg glances at him, then at the audience. They are. But real also means uncomfortable sometimes. A few audience members clap at that. Sam gives a small, acknowledging smile. That's fair. Another co-host jumps in, her tone more curious than confrontational. Let me ask you something a little different. When you see these debates happening, online, on shows like this, do you ever feel like people are talking past each other instead of actually listening? Sam exhales lightly. All the time. Why do you think that is? She asks. Because it's easier, Sam says. It's easier to react than to actually sit with something you might not agree with. Whoopi nods, but she's already ready with a response. But sitting with something doesn't mean accepting it. Of course not, Sam replies. But it means understanding it before responding. The audience murmurs again, some agreement, some hesitation. Whoopi leans slightly toward him. And what if what you're trying to understand is something that directly impacts people in a harmful way? Do you still take that time, or do you speak up immediately? Sam doesn't answer right away this time. He takes a breath, clearly weighing his words more carefully than before. I think, he starts, then pauses. I think urgency matters in some situations. Absolutely. But I also think reacting without clarity can make things worse. A co-host nods thoughtfully. That's actually a really nuanced point. Whoopi doesn't disagree, but she doesn't let it settle either. But people don't always have the luxury of nuance when they're being affected in real time. That lands. The audience reacts with a soft wave of murmurs. Sam leans forward slightly now, more engaged than defensive. And I respect that. I really do. I'm not trying to dismiss that experience. Then what are you saying? Whoopi asks, not aggressively, but directly. I'm saying, Sam continues, that there's a difference between responding with intention and responding out of pressure. A co-host interjects, trying to bridge the two sides. So you're saying you don't want to say something just because people expect you to? Yes, Sam says. Because then it's not real. And people can tell when something isn't real. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. Sometimes people can also tell when something is missing. The audience reacts again, a louder, oh, this time. Sam gives a small nod. That's fair. And that's where the criticism comes from, Whoopi adds. Another co-host leans in quickly, sensing the tightening energy. But criticism can also be overwhelming, right? Especially at that level. Sam looks at her, grateful for the shift in angle. It can be. It can be a lot. How do you deal with that? She asks. Sam pauses. Honestly, I try to stay grounded. Focus on the people I trust. Step away when it gets too loud. Do you step away from social media? She asks. Sometimes, Sam says. I think everyone should, to be honest. Light laughter from the audience. Whoopi nods slightly. That's probably good advice for all of us. There's a small release of tension, not gone, but softened for a moment. Then another co-host, who's been quieter up to this point, speaks up. Can I ask something a little more direct? Everyone turns toward her. Sure, Sam says. She leans forward. Do you think there's ever a moment where staying neutral actually becomes part of the problem? The audience reacts immediately, louder this time. Sam's expression shifts again, more serious. I don't see it as staying neutral, he says. I see it as being thoughtful. But those two things can look the same from the outside, she replies. That's true, Sam admits. Whoopi jumps back in. And perception matters. Sam nods. It does. Then doesn't that bring us back to responsibility? Whoopi asks. There's a quiet beat. Sam exhales slowly. Yes, it does. The audience claps lightly, not because the tension is gone, but because the conversation feels honest. A co-host smiles, trying to ease things again. Okay, I feel like we've gone deep today. A few laughs. Deeper than expected, Sam says with a slight smile. Welcome to The View, Whoopi replies, just a hint of humor in her voice. The audience laughs, and for a second, it feels lighter again. But then Whoopi adds more quietly, we don't do surface here. Sam looks at her, nodding. I can see that. There's a pause, but this one feels different. Less tense, more reflective. Then, unexpectedly, Sam shifts the conversation slightly himself. Can I say something? He asks. Of course, Whoopi replies. Sam looks around the table, then out toward the audience. I think what we're talking about isn't just about celebrities. It's about how we all engage with each other now. The audience quiets again. It's about how quickly we judge, how quickly we react, he he continues. And I think there's value in slowing down, even just a little. A co-host nods. That's a fair point. But slowing down doesn't mean staying silent, Whoopi says. No, Sam agrees. It doesn't. Then what does it mean? She asks. It means being intentional, Sam says. It means making sure that when you do speak, you're actually contributing something, not just adding to the noise. The audience responds with a mix of claps and murmurs. Whoopi studies him again, then leans back slightly. I can respect that, she says. There's a subtle shift in the room, not agreement exactly, but acknowledgement. Another co-host smiles. Look at that progress. Light laughter. Sam smiles too, a bit more relaxed now. I'll take it. But then Whoopi adds one more thing, her tone calm but still firm. Just remember, sometimes people need more than intention. They need clarity. The audience reacts again, softer this time. Sam nods slowly. That's fair. And clarity doesn't always come later, she continues. Sometimes it needs to come in the moment. There's a brief silence. Sam doesn't immediately respond. And that silence says more than anything else he could have said right then. The camera cuts briefly to the audience, attentive, invested, completely drawn in. Back at the table, the co-hosts exchange quick glances. They all know this has gone far beyond a typical promotional interview. One of them finally steps in, her tone lighter but controlled. All right, we're going to take a quick break. A few claps, a slight release of tension. But when we come back, she adds, smiling toward Sam, we're going to talk a little more about your upcoming projects, and maybe something a bit less intense. The audience laughs. Sam chuckles softly. That sounds good. Whoopi gives a small smile, but her eyes still carry that same focus. As the camera begins to pull back and the applause rises, you can feel it. This conversation didn't resolve. It didn't neatly wrap up. And whatever comes next is going to matter even more. The applause fades as the show comes back from break, but the energy in the room hasn't reset the way it usually does. There's still something lingering, not uncomfortable exactly, but charged. The kind of atmosphere where everyone knows they just witnessed something real, and they're curious how it's going to land. One of the co-hosts smiles toward the camera, easing them back in. Welcome back. We're here with Sam Heughan, and yes, we've had quite the conversation already. The audience laughs lightly, some clapping in agreement. Sam smiles, sitting a little more relaxed now, though there's still a trace of that earlier intensity in his posture. It's been lively. Lively is a good word, another co-host adds with a grin. Whoopi Goldberg leans slightly forward, her tone calmer now, less probing than before. That's what happens when people actually talk to each other instead of around each other. A few audience members clap at that. Sam nods. I appreciate that, honestly. Not every show goes there. Well, Whoopi replies, we're not every show. There's a small ripple of laughter, and for the first time in a while, the tension feels like it's easing into something more reflective than confrontational. A co-host turns back to Sam. Let's talk about what's next for you. Because after all that, people are probably wondering what you do when you're not in the middle of debates like this. The audience laughs again. Sam chuckles. Hopefully something a little quieter. So what is coming up, she asks. Sam shifts slightly, moving back into familiar territory. I've got a couple of projects in development, some filming later this year. And I've been focusing a lot on producing as well, trying to tell stories that maybe don't always get told. That's interesting, another co-host says. Do those stories reflect the kind of conversations we've been having today? Sam pauses, then nods. In some ways, yeah. I think storytelling can open up conversations without forcing them. Whoopi watches him closely, but her tone now is more measured, less challenging. That's a powerful tool when it's used well. I hope so, Sam replies. There's a calm moment, a noticeable shift from the earlier back and forth. Then one of the co-hosts glances toward the audience. I'm curious. How many of you feel like conversations like this are necessary? A good portion of the audience applauds. And how many of you feel like they get too intense sometimes? She adds. A different wave of laughter and claps rolls through. See, she says, smiling. Both can be true. Sam nods. That's exactly it. Whoopi adds quietly. It usually is. There's a brief pause, but this one feels settled, not tense. Then the conversation shifts naturally toward wrapping up. Well, the co-host continues, before we let you go, I want to ask, after today, do you feel like you'll approach these conversations any differently? The question is softer than the ones earlier, but it still carries weight. Sam thinks for a moment. I think I'll probably keep doing what I try to do already. Listen, reflect, and speak when I feel I can add something meaningful. Whoopi nods slowly. That's all anyone can really do. And maybe, Sam adds, be open to being challenged. The audience responds with a warm round of applause. Whoopi gives a small smile. That part's important. There's a shared understanding in that moment, not full agreement, but respect. All right, the co-host says, clapping her hands lightly. Give it up for Sam Heughan, everyone. The audience applauds loudly as Sam stands, waving and thanking them. He exchanges quick goodbyes with the hosts, a handshake with Whoopi that lingers just a second longer than expected. Not awkward, just deliberate. Good conversation, Whoopi says quietly to him. Agreed, Sam replies. The camera pulls back slightly as he exits the stage, the applause continuing. And then, just like that, the segment ends. But what happened on that stage doesn't stay there. Within minutes, clips from The View start circulating online. Short excerpts of the exchange, especially the moments between Sam and Whoopi, begin to spread across platforms. People start reacting, analyzing, debating. Some viewers praise Whoopi Goldberg for holding a firm line on accountability, calling her questions necessary and direct. Others defend Sam Heughan, saying he stayed composed under pressure and brought a more nuanced perspective to the conversation. Clips of the performative comment get shared widely. So does Whoopi's response about clarity and responsibility. Within hours, hashtags start trending, debates forming around the same themes that played out live: responsibility, influence, intention, and perception. Some fans point out how calm Sam remained, even when pressed. Others highlight how Whoopi didn't let the conversation drift into safe territory, keeping it grounded in real-world implications. Backstage, according to reports that start surfacing later, the tone was much calmer than people might expect. Sources say there was no shouting, no lingering hostility, just a continued discussion, quieter, more measured, away from the cameras. Sam reportedly thanked the hosts for the conversation. Whoopi, in turn, acknowledged that he handled himself well. And that's often how these moments go, more intense on screen than they are behind it. But for viewers, the impact stays. Clips continue to circulate for days. Comment sections fill up, some thoughtful, some heated, some clearly divided. Some people say it's exactly what daytime television should be. Honest, unscripted, willing to go beyond surface-level promotion. Others say it felt too confrontational, too pointed for what they expected from a guest appearance. And that's the thing about moments like this. They don't land the same way for everyone. Back on the next episode of The View, the hosts briefly reference the conversation. People had a lot to say. One of them mentions with a smile. Whoopi simply nods. That's what happens when people are listening. No apology, no backtracking, just acknowledgement. And for Sam, interviews continue, but this one stands out. Because it wasn't just about promoting a project. It became something bigger. A conversation people didn't expect, but couldn't stop talking about. And now it's your turn. What did you think about this moment? Was Whoopi Goldberg right to press the issue the way she did? Or do you think Sam Heughan handled it the right way by staying measured and intentional? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.